This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region or by our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy.
In the realm of prospectors, it is not unheard of for one to lose a single mine. But to lose two, that borders upon the realm of incredulity. And if, by some unfortunate twist of fate, a third mine were to go astray, well, such an event would surely be deemed absolutely impossible. Yet, dear reader, I must inform you that this very occurrence did transpire, and it is a matter of historical record. The explanation, it seems, lies in the words of the prospector himself. "The blame falls upon that dim-witted Dutchman," he lamented, his self-disgust evident. "And who might that Dutchman be, you ask? Alas, it is none other than I, Peter Prengle of Bavaria, Germany." Arriving in Nevada around the turn of the 20th century, Peter Prengle toiled in the mines for a number of years, carefully amassing a modest sum of money. His heart yearned for the freedom to venture forth as an independent prospector, but his means were limited to a humble spring wagon, colloquially known as a Democrat, along with a set of harness and a team of horses. Through his persuasive charm, he convinced a saloon owner in Goldfield to provide him with the necessary supplies and stake him financially. With this meager equipment, Peter set out into the treacherous desert, fully aware of the risks and dangers that lay ahead. The desert-dwelling skeptics, with their incessant head-shaking, deemed the Dutchman utterly mad for embarking on such a perilous endeavor. Undeterred, the resolute prospector gradually traversed the desolate wastelands to the southeast of Goldfield, skirting the edges of Paiute Mesa until he found himself venturing into the arid, unforgiving foothills of the southern Cowich Mountains. By what can only be described as sheer luck, Peter stumbled upon a meager spring, its droplets trickling forth with a modest abundance. It was at this humble oasis that he chose to establish his camp. The melted remnants of winter snow and the precious water from the spring allowed a thin layer of grass to emerge, providing a meager sustenance for his horses, who relied upon the oats carried in his wagon for their nourishment. Peter Prengle, a phlegmatic man hailing from Bavaria, was of short stature and a tad chunky. As a greenhorn in the rugged Nevada terrain, he hadn't learned much during his sojourn. Landmarks and water holes held little significance to him, for his memory was as fleeting as a golden snitch. This almost proved fatal for the 25-year-old prospector. In the second week, Prengle ventured out to prospect, oblivious to the dwindling flow of the spring. He didn't bother to check the water barrel in his wagon, neglecting the signs that thirst was fast approaching. It was the following day, with the spring fading fast, when he stumbled upon a thrilling discovery, a float in a dry wash half a mile from his camp. Enthralled by this find, he painstakingly traced the float to its source, spending 5 long days on the task. The source, a ledge of rotten quartz, lay about a mile from his camp. Armed with a miner's pick, he chipped away at the ore, gathering enough to fill 2 gunny sacks, each weighing around 50 pounds. By the time Prengle began his journey back to camp, nightfall had descended on that scorching August day in 1904. His canteen was dry as the forbidden forest, and thirst drained him of his strength. He had to set down 1 sack, carry the second a short distance, and then return for the one he left behind. This meant traversing twice the distance to bring both sacks of ore to camp. Under a sky adorned with twinkling stars, Prengle finally dragged the last sack into camp. The desert heat, though still demanding, seemed to relent. His horses, parched and desperate, stood before the spring that trickled from a rocky ledge, their hooves pawing the ground in a desperate plea for relief. The spring had ceased its flow entirely, leaving a desolate hole devoid of water. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Prengle decided to feed the horses from the barrel in the wagon, only to discover it was empty. With a heavy heart, he prepared and consumed his supper, knowing that he had no other choice but to leave immediately, taking advantage of the cover of night and the absence of the scorching sun. Determined, Prengle unloaded everything from the wagon except for a sack of oats, an empty barrel, and some canned food. The 2 sacks filled with gold-laden ore were carefully placed in the wagon bed, representing a substantial fortune. He harnessed the horses to the wagon and embarked on a grueling journey to the Stonewall Mountains, a daunting 75 miles away. Although he had forgotten about the closer water holes, he pressed on, knowing that a regular trail with water sources awaited him. Progressing slowly throughout the night and the following day until noon, Prengle eventually halted to give the weary horses a much-needed rest. The animals suffered greatly from thirst and were rapidly deteriorating. Prengle sustained himself with a meager meal of canned tomatoes and evaporated milk, the only liquid he had left to sustain his own life. There was nothing for the horses. As nightfall arrived, Prengle embarked on the arduous trek once more, struggling to keep the horses moving at a snail's pace. The following day brought another desperate march, intensifying the battle against the unforgiving desert. On the 3rd day, Prengle stumbled upon a rarely traveled trail, raising his hopes for assistance. However, these hopes were swiftly dashed as there were no signs of recent activity. Nevertheless, the trail led him to a lukewarm waterhole the next day, offering a glimmer of hope amidst the desolation. As Peter Prengle arrived at the destination, his mind teetered on the edge of madness, scorched by the relentless sun, and his weary body matched the exhaustion of his horses. Desperate to quench their thirst, the equine creatures hastened towards the water, and Prengle, unaware of the consequences, failed to halt them. Yet the prolonged deprivation of water proved fatal as their bellies grotesquely distended, leaving them in excruciating agony. Helpless, Prengle watched as his loyal companions succumbed to their suffering, their last breath stolen by the arid desert air. Throughout this ordeal, Prengle himself had refrained from taking a single sip of water, painfully aware of the dire consequences. Only after exercising utmost caution, he ventured to consume a few measured swallows, allowing an hour to pass before daring to drink again. Now traversing familiar territory, Prengle readied himself for the arduous 40-mile journey along the trail leading to Coopright, a mere 15 miles south of Goldfield. Calculating that he could cover the distance in approximately 20 hours of walking, he packed just enough canned provisions to sustain him, ensuring he could carry a sack filled with precious gold ore. Setting off under the cover of night, Prengle made swift progress during the cool hours, though he was compelled to seek respite when the scorching sun transformed the surroundings into a blistering inferno. Following the seldom-treaded path, he found himself converging with the main road that stretched from north to south. And there, just 5 miles away from Coopright, a creaking freight wagon from the south caught up with him. Seizing the opportunity, Prengle hitched a ride in the wagon, allowing his weary body to recuperate before continuing onward to Goldfield. The saloon owner, who had generously provided Prengle with supplies, wasted no time in having the ore assayed. The results were beyond belief, as the ore boasted an astonishing value ranging from $12,000 to $15,000 per ton. With a heart brimming with excitement, he hastened to locate Prengle, urging him to seek assistance and venture forth to the miraculous discovery without delay. However, Prengle, steadfast and unyielding, shook his head resolutely. The ordeal he had endured in that infernal place, which had nearly claimed his life, had left an indelible mark on his spirit. Regardless of the immense wealth that awaited them, he vowed to sever all ties with it. Despite vehemently berating Prengle to no avail, the proprietor of the saloon dispatched men to retrieve the second sack of ore and the wagon from the waterhole. Upon approaching Prengle once more, the resolute Dutchman offered to chart a map revealing the gold load's whereabouts. But upon discovering that the wagon would not be returned, and the saloon owner intended to mill the ore, keeping the profits for himself, Prengle adamantly refused to provide the map. Under the shroud of night, the Dutchman bid farewell to Goldfield, embarking on a southern journey to Searchlight, where he toiled in the mines and mills. In due time, he returned to Goldfield in 1906, crossing paths with another German by the name of Hermann Schwarzkopf. Although Prengle's original grubstaker had since departed in 1904, the Dutchman dispatched 3 separate parties in a relentless quest to unearth his elusive discovery. In 1908, Prengle and Schwarzkopf pooled their meager resources and embarked on a joint prospecting expedition. Laden with burros, they ventured northward towards the Humboldt Range. Prengle, having learned from a disastrous previous endeavor involving a wagon, was determined to avoid a repetition of that misfortune. After aimlessly wandering through the mountains, their hopes gradually waned until they finally established a permanent camp at Black Knob Spring. Each day, the two men embarked on separate paths, diligently prospecting the rugged terrain. They tirelessly chipped away at any rock that held even the faintest promise, only to find their efforts unrewarded when the nightfall brought disappointingly insignificant samples. In the vast expanse of the desert, their dreams of unearthing a fortune remained unfulfilled. Yet, unbeknownst to Prengle and Schwarzkopf, destiny would soon unveil a twist of fate that would forever alter their lives and illuminate their path to prosperity. One fine morning, as the sun painted the sky with its golden hues, Prengle and Schwarzkopf embarked on their prospecting journey. Little did they know that this day would hold a fateful encounter. The camp was abuzz with excitement, but their joy turned to worry when the burros mysteriously vanished. With a determined spirit, Prengle set off to track their elusive companions. Following the faint traces of the 6 burros, Prengle found himself led towards a pass, almost 6 miles away from their camp. As dusk crept upon them, he managed to corral the wayward animals, but not before his eyes caught sight of promising rocks. Unable to resist the miner's urge, he took a pick and chipped off a few chunks, hoping for hidden treasures. Returning to camp under the cloak of darkness, their hearts raced with anticipation. Gathered around the crackling campfire, they examined the rocks, and their excitement soared. 3 large pieces revealed gleaming gold when tested. Hammer struck against stone, and golden nuggets cascaded like tiny stars. Their dreams were ignited, and sleep eluded them that night. With the first rays of dawn, they set forth following Prengle's tracks and the wandering burros' hoofprints. They stumbled upon places where rock had been broken, but the elusive source of the golden treasure eluded them. Days turned into a blur as they tirelessly searched, only to find disappointment in worthless rocks. Some would even refer to them as dumpite, weighing tons. Yet their indomitable spirit remained unyielding, for they knew that hidden treasures awaited them in the depths of the earth. For 3 long weeks, until their provisions dwindled, they scoured the land from dawn till dusk, pursuing any glimmer of hope. Eventually, they were compelled to venture westward, towards a bustling town by the railroad. It was there that Schwarzkopf bid farewell to Prengle, his spirit broken and his resolve depleted. Undeterred by his companion's departure, Prengle made 2 more valiant attempts to unearth the elusive gold vein that had haunted his dreams. Alas, both efforts proved fruitless, driving him back to the familiar grounds of the Cowich foothills. Yet even there, fortune eluded him, and he returned to town, consumed by frustration and self-reproach. Desperate to salvage his reputation, he regaled fellow prospectors with tales of the 2 magnificent lost mines. Prengle's account, though fantastical, gained credence and spread like wildfire. His tale reached far and wide, even finding its way into the pages of the esteemed Salt Lake Mining Review in September of 1909. This only served to lure more seasoned prospectors who, despite their better judgment, squandered valuable time in search of Prengle's phantom riches. Undeterred by repeated failures, Prengle ventured once more into the Cowich foothills and later into the Humboldts. However, each expedition ended in disappointment. The desert became his reluctant home, and his once optimistic spirit soured into the depths of despair. Deep cerulean eyes, etched with the lines of countless sunsets, now possessed a faraway gaze, as if peering into an uncertain future. Having lost 2 prized mines, fate still held one final bitter blow in store for Prengle. He vanished from his usual haunts in Nevada, leaving those who knew him clueless as to his fate. Some prospectors, acquainted with his tale of misfortune, speculated that one day the wind would uncover his bleached bones, laying to rest the mystery that enshrouded him. Yet, the allure of Goldfield, the very name that had fueled his expeditions for countless years, proved too strong for Prengle to resist. Another gold field, this time in Arizona, beckoned to him. And so, in the year 1924, he resurfaced, drawn once more to the promise of gold. As the scorching desert suns had twisted and warped his middle-aged frame, a slightly deaf man emerged on the outskirts of Goldfield, nestled near the enigmatic Superstition Mountains. Accompanied by a string of burros from Phoenix, he settled into a solitary camp and secured employment with the Matzatzal Mining Company. Although gold had been unearthed years ago, Prengle's true motive was to explore the area while engaging in a semblance of work. His insatiable curiosity led him to bombard F.R. McElroy and other seasoned miners with countless inquiries, sharing tales of his Nevada escapades in return. After 4 months, Prengle bid farewell to his occupation, replenished his supplies, and vanished into the mysterious depths of the legendary Superstitions. Many assumed he had succumbed to the age-old myth of the lost Dutchman mine. However, Prengle harbored no interest in such legends. 2 months later, he reappeared, briefly camping before continuing his journey. He had stumbled upon a placer, a treasure trove of gold concealed beneath the grassy surface of a sprawling cove on the northern side of the mountains. Laden with gleaming nuggets, his burros trudged heavily under the weight of their golden cargo. Once the precious metal had been shipped, Prengle vowed to return, tirelessly panning the area until its riches were exhausted. "This time the Dutchman shall not outsmart me, Yah," he proclaimed. "This time I shall claim the gold without losing my mine." Fate, however, had a cruel twist in store for him, as it decided to grant Prengle a taste of fortune before snatching it away. Departing only as far as Apache Junction with his burros, he left them behind and continued his journey with a truck, carrying his raw gold to Phoenix. A week later, he triumphantly returned to Goldfield, his spirits soaring high. Unbeknownst to him, destiny chuckled at its malevolent plan. Following the trail of his burros, Prengle disappeared once more, vanishing amidst the colossal slopes of the mountains, concealed by towering saguaros. A moon's turn later, he returned, his visit brief as he procured provisions from the mining company store. His once garrulous nature had waned, a mere shadow of his former self. If words did escape his lips, they dripped with the bitterness of a venomous serpent. His meager circle of friends in Goldfield sensed that something had transpired, but none fathomed the loss of his precious placer. Nevertheless, it perplexed them that after a month's toil, he emerged empty-handed, devoid of glittering gold. Merely a month passed before he reappeared in Goldfield, his proclamation resolute. He was departing for good. Words tumbled forth in an unbroken torrent, punctuated by angry oaths. Astonishing as it may seem, he had indeed relinquished his third mine to the capricious hands of fate. The truth lay bare before him. He had failed to retrace his steps to the sacred cove nestled amidst the mountains. At first, he attributed his misfortune to the deluge that followed an abrupt thunderstorm. Once parched washes now flowed with a modest trickle when he returned. Yet he soon realized that this explanation fell short. The familiar landmarks he had etched in his memory had vanished, leaving him adrift. The truth stared him in the face. He had lost the coveted placer nestled within the flat, a treasure more bountiful than his previous 2 abandoned mines in Nevada. Prengle embarked on a journey trailing his faithful burros. Where his path led and what fate befell him remained shrouded in mystery. The Nevada goldfield withered on the vine, its vitality waning. The Arizona goldfield succumbed to desolation, its once thriving landscape plagued by decay and wind-swept emptiness when the golden ore depleted. Tales of Prengle's discovery on the northern side of the Superstitions spread far and wide, enticing several men to embark on fruitless expeditions in pursuit of his lost bounty. F.R. McElroy and his companion ventured forth, their quest for the elusive treasure ending in disappointment. Although fragments of gold lay hidden beneath the grass in the vicinity, they amounted to a trifling sum, unable to be traced back to Prengle's vanished placer. Perhaps an unkind fate intended for the dumb Dutchman, Ja, to relinquish a mine capable of yielding untold riches to its discoverer.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.